I am back again. Asia. So I will start with Japan. Japan is rated at Coface, remember short-term rating, A1 with a negative watch. Does it work? Yeah? With a negative watch since this April. I like to replace first the catastrophe Japan has experienced in the general context of the Japanese economy. First, remember that in 2 years, 2008 and 2009, Japan has experienced a growth shock of more than 7 points. Then last year, the recovery was very amazing.
Excuse me, I just flipped the slides.
Oh, sorry.
I'll do that.
I was just start. Okay. Okay, thank you. So last year the recovery was very dynamic, nearly 4 points of progression, thanks to the dynamism of the exports and what was surprising, that's household spending. They haven't been spending money for many, many years, and for the first time, and thanks to the very aggressive stimulus of the new left-wing elected party of Noah Kan, they could spend. And the growth of nearly 4% was achieved even with a negative growth in the fourth quarter. So the catastrophe just occurred in a general weakness of the Japanese economy. So for 2011, we expect quasi-flat growth of 0.3% with 2 quarters of recession. Of course, there are the losses due to the damages, direct damages to the manufacturing plants located in the northeast of Japan. But there is also, and that area represents more than 6% of the GDP of Japan, but there is also the fact that the electricity supply is going to be rationed from this June during the summer, with a peak in the summer due to the air conditioning. And this shortage of electricity supply are not just in the area directly hurt, but it goes further down to Tokyo, around the Kanto district, which represents 37% of the Japanese GDP. So it's not, all the companies will not be affected, but of course when you are manufacturing components and you have a shortage of electricity, you just can throw the components you have been manufacturing. So there is also, as a strain, the psychological damage to the Japanese population, which has lost, of course, confidence and fears a larger nuclear accident. Just a word about Fukushima nuclear plant. According to all the experts, this plant will never work again. So the electricity supply will have to be monitored in another way, buying probably gas and more oil. But it has to be organized. So we can imagine we will have a rebound with the reconstruction, which has been evaluated to $250 billion. Yes, reconstruction, of course, but we have just to consider that a portion of the earth and the sea, but the earth for the reconstruction has been polluted by plutonium, and so the reconstruction, well, nobody talks about that, but it's just a question of, I guess, good sense. Where do you rebuild on a polluted earth? So it has to be taken away and so on. So Japan will be hurt, but as a key player of the global supply chain, other countries will be under constraint. Of course, we will expect a slowdown of the exports in many Asian countries. Actually, in April, the imports from Japan in South Korea, in Taiwan, and in China have slowed down. So remember, there is a perfect correlation between the export from Japan of intermediate products and the export of China, for example, of finished products to the US, to Japan, and to Europe. So we can expect a slowdown of export in these areas. There is also some good point for competitors of Japanese subcontractors. Here, again, I forgot. I just, sorry. Here you see that Japan has a key role in the export of world export, which are in orange, and in the world import. And you have as well its percentage share according to the different sectors. And it is automotive and components, electronic and components, which will be hurt more precisely. So of course, some competitors can pick up market shares where the Japanese subcontractors have difficulties. Actually, some Japanese big companies are already relocating their plants, not in Japan, but in some Asian countries. Thailand is making a very sharp lobbying to Japanese multinationals so they can settle in their country. Another sector will be hurt, it's tourism, especially in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and Thailand, from Japanese tourists and then tourists from Thailand and Indonesia to Japan. The good thing is that thanks to the reconstruction, there is probably some contracts to be picked up by companies abroad. L'un dans l'autre, as we say in French, but negative effects, which I've just listed, will be partly set off in this area thanks to the very dynamic domestic demand in most of the Asian country. Here you see the different growth 2009 and and 2010 and the forecast for 2011. You have the main economies here. There is two groups of country roughly. There is the country which has recovered their country rating. It's a group with a strong dynamism, export-led or domestic-led. For the export-led, you have Taiwan and South Korea, which are rated A2, and Hong Kong and Singapore, which are rated A1. The strong demand-led economy are mainly Indonesia and Philippines. As Malaysia, it's just in between. You have another group which is not on this graph, where the country are still with downgraded ratings or negative watch, and it is Thailand because of the election which are expected in June and which could see the issue with political tension. And there is Vietnam, which we have downgraded in April from B negative watch to C. We have much concern about this country because it has very poor financial situation. Inflation is really high, around 17%. Private debt has exploded to 140% of the GDP. Foreign exchange reserves are really down, just a few weeks imports. And the repeated devaluation of the dong, 6 devaluations since June 2008, just pushed the economy to a dollarization and even a goldenization in a way. So we could have a hard landing in this country. So we are concerned about it. But on the whole, the growth will be dynamic in this area, but could be hampered by inflation. It is imported inflation, food and energy prices going up, but we fear that the increase of the input could be passed through to the final products and then just going to higher wages, and you get the vicious circle of the inflation with high price, high wages, high price, high wages. Inflation is accelerating in India, and India is the second country of the area where we have concern. We are monitoring the acceleration of the inflation. Because India, like actually Vietnam, have very high current account deficit. And of course, with inflation, that makes the hard landing more probable.